Helene Berger and her husband, 80, found out he had Alzheimer's shortly after their 50th wedding anniversary. The news was tough to take, but the couple was determined not to be defined by the diagnosis. Helene tells their story in her new book, Choosing Joy, Alzheimer's, A Book of Hope. She acknowledges that the approach that they used might not work for everyone, but hopes that her book helps make living with Alzheimer's easier for both the patient and caregivers.
After our 50th wedding anniversary, my husband, 80 Berger, was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And when the doctor pronounced the 3 fatal words, "You have Alzheimer's," and by the way, the doctor was the head of the state-of-the-art Weens Center for Memory Disorder, he turned to my husband and said, "How do you feel?" And he said immediately and very simply, "I don't want to live anymore." I took a deep breath, and in the course of the first year, he was going down the typical Alzheimer's symptoms, a little irritable and you know, I don't have to describe the symptoms to you. But after the first year, he became known once again as a man with a radiant smile. And strangers would stop me and say, "I've never seen the man without a smile." So let me fast forward very far. 6 years later, the night before he unexpectedly passed away, he was healthy, he did not pass away from Alzheimer's. We took 17 friends out for dinner, and I didn't tell him who was coming because I didn't want to put pressure on him to think he had to remember the name, and so he didn't know. He greeted 6 years after Alzheimer and what became the last night of his life. He greeted every one of those friends by name.
Wow.
It was a wow. And the book is, and in addition to that, he sat down, he fractured his hip 2.5 years before he passed away. He never walked again. He raised this glass of water. He never drank. And he makes the most articulate and profound toast, thanking the friends for being there, thanking them for their care, for their phone calls, for their interest, for their taking care of me. And 2 of my friends at the end of the evening came over, people knew him well. "Are you sure he's got Alzheimer's?"
Wow.
So the book is an amazing, amazing story. And what the book is about is what did we do together, not me alone, because I had a partner who wanted what we did together to make this kind of startling progress happen.
So in the book, you describe 80 as someone who was bright, having a rare integrity, a music lover, and a great dancer. And you met when you were very young and then married shortly thereafter.
Yes.
What else do you remember that you love about your husband, your late husband?
You've just said so many things that I love about him. What I wrote at some point in the book is that rather than feeling less love after all we went through, it's hard to believe, but I actually felt that I loved him more because I was so in awe of the way he handled with such grace and dignity what he was facing. I mean, and I wrote in the book, I feel very certain that if I were in those shoes, I would not have handled it the way he did. So there were so many things. He was bright, he loved music, and ethical in it.
And you also write in the book about how you two faced the challenge of his Alzheimer's diagnosis together, and you did lots of things together to keep his mind sharp. What were a few that you found were very effective?
Okay. First of all, I was not so smart the first year.
Trial and error, right?
And I made, the typical mistakes. One of the things that's, I think, really unique about the book is when I found that we did something that worked, I didn't just say, "Oh, that's good to do that then." I tried very hard to find what was the principle behind it that made it work. And I'll give you a couple of examples if I have time. One, we had a housekeeper for 15 years, Lisette, for 3 days a week before he was diagnosed, and she adored him. And I had no extra help for 3.5 years. I didn't want it, but after he fractured his hip, I had no choice. So if Lisette had come in the morning and said in a cheery voice, "Mr. Berger, your breakfast is ready," I would have thought that was lovely. She didn't do that. She came into the room and said, "Mr. Berger, are you ready for breakfast?" And my jaw dropped with the brilliance. No matter how sweetly you say it, "your breakfast is ready" is an implied command. This is what you have to do now. She made it into a question. The choice was his.
So really feeding that curiosity.
But that every decision from then on, I never said, "You got to do this. You please go to the bathroom. We're going to the doctor." Everything is, "Would you like to? We're leaving soon. Would you like to go? Would you want to watch this or that? Do you want to play Sudoku after dinner or draw?" Everything was put in the form of a question, which meant that part of the symptoms, it's not a symptom of Alzheimer's, part of the reaction to the symptoms of Alzheimer's is when a grown man or woman is told what to do when they're used to making decisions all their life. They're going to fight back. They're going to be resentful. Every decision, everything he did was his decision. He owned it, and he didn't fight it. And that was one of the basic things that helped so very much. I included him in all of the decision making when there certainly were problems. It's not free and clear. There were problems, but I spoke to him rationally, not talking down to him. And we had a history of 50 years of working. Wasn't that easy in the beginning. We had typical, everybody does, but we had a history then of working out problems together. And what thrilled me so often is that he was part of the solution. It wasn't ever me telling him what to do, and he owned it.
You also talk about how writing and drawing became very important to Addie. Why do you think that was?
Let me tell you, one of the key points in the book is his mind was kept active every minute of the day. And so what I tried to do first was to build on things that he loved before, like the piano. He used to play classical music beautifully. He hadn't played in 3 years. I'm getting to where you're asking. He hadn't played for 3 years. And I asked him one day, "Honey, you love the piano. You played so beautifully. Why aren't you playing?" "I can't." "Why?" "My fingers don't work." "Would you give me 10 minutes a day?" "Sure." Within a few weeks, he was playing an hour a day, beaming away. So that was a past talent that he had. What I tried to do was introduce new things. He had never drawn a picture in his life. I don't even think he knew the names of the colors. And one day I put in front of him a beautiful new pad and markers and crayons and magic markers. And after dinner, I put it in front of him and I said, "Draw something." He said, "What? What should I draw?" "Whatever makes you happy." And that began for the last 3 years of his life. Every night, not only did he draw the pictures, but he was so proud that he signed and dated them. And the book is full of those pictures. And the cover with that sunshine is not by a graphic artist. That is his drawing, signed, and that was one of the few that he titled, and he called it Happy Sun. So when you think of the beginning, "I don't want to live anymore," nobody could draw happy pictures like that if they were depressed.